Hello, this is Joey J. Ping here, checking in live, respectmyregion.com. We're back on another episode of the Respect My Region podcast, folks. Today, we've got a really special guest. We have CCELL in the house, man. We've got Nick Kovacevich. He is the corporate relations director from CCELL. You guys might recognize CCELL as being one of the most recognizable hardware companies for cannabis, specifically in the vape space. And so, Nick, it is an honor to have you here today. Thank you for joining. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. How about yourself?
It's a great day. We were dealing with the fires here in Los Angeles, where I live now currently, for the better half of the last 10 days. Is a little stressful there for a bit. A lot of damage has been done for a lot of people there. And so for us, we're trying to, keep our heads down to the grind and stay out of the path of the wind right now and do what we can to help some people through this content and through raising awareness. And that leads me to the next point. People everywhere out there. Here in California, there is a group called Embark. They've posted content about where you can donate and foundations and all these things that you can do to support these fires. And so I wanted to shout out Embark specifically because you can go anywhere on the internet to find this. But in our cannabis world, Embark is a massive retailer here in California, and they're doing everything they can to create that awareness and to help these people, people that lost their homes, their families, things, people that passed away, you name it, schools burned down, the whole nine. And so for those of you guys, if you guys can please go check that out and support there, that would be great. Now, Nick, CCELL, you guys debuted CCELL 3.0, we're going to call it, right? At MJ BizCon. Let's talk a little bit about your role first, who you are, and what you guys are up to at CCELL and why that's such a big deal.
Yeah, great. And, look, I echo your sentiment around the LA fires. It's been terrible. It's devastating. We're talking about a scale larger than Katrina in terms of the financial impact. And, the most important thing is the personal impact. So thoughts and prayers go out to everybody affected there. And, a lot of work to be done. A lot of aid is needed. And
Yes.
so, appreciate everyone being able to contribute however they can. That means a lot to the folks in LA, folks in our state of California. I'm just down, south of there in Newport Beach. So we're lucky, but it's always a risk living in California, no matter kind of where you are. So, we got to be thankful where we're at, in life, in our industry. I've been in the industry a long time, really since 2010. And here in California really is where we started. And I was part of the co-founding group of Kush Bottles. And then, in 2017, really, we partnered with CCELL. So CCELL came out with the ceramic cartridge in 2016. So I kind of been there from the beginning as a distribution partner. And Kushco was acquired by Green Lane. They're still a distribution partner along with Jupiter, 3Win, and Canna Brands. And so the distribution partners that have been there since the beginning, they're still part of this. But CCELL is taking a more direct approach now as well, getting boots on the ground here in the U.S. We have an LA office headquarters. We've got a phenomenal research lab out in Phoenix called SDR. And so I'm part of the new CCELL. And the new CCELL is really investing heavily in the cannabis industry at a time where not a lot of people are able to make those investments, right? The investors have been shook out over the last few years, as we all know. And so it's great to be part of a company that has such a strong balance sheet and strong leadership and commitment to this industry, sees the future. This company really plans ahead. I've been a part of publicly traded companies in the industry, and it's challenging, right? You're looking quarter to quarter. You're looking short term. What's refreshing about CCELL leadership at CCELL and the parent company S'more is really the long-term approach. And we're talking about a company that's taking almost 15% of annual revenues and putting that back into R&D to generate the future of technology when it comes to vaping across a lot of different sectors, but of course, cannabis intentionally, right? And so to be a part of that is great. And, I think this was our first kind of big announcement in the last few years of some game-changing technology, this 3.0 technology. And so as we move sort of to CCELL 2.0, having more boots on the ground here in the US, we are launching CCELL 3.0 when it comes to the hardware. And of course, as you mentioned, our hardware known across the industry, pioneered the ceramic core in 2016, one of the largest sellers. We've probably sold more vape hardware than anyone, right? Over the years, and I was part of that. But now we've got the 3.0 coming out. And so this is really another chapter in what heating and vaping technology can be for consumption. And, for me, I've always been a flower consumer. I know you're a flower consumer, right? And it's kind of driven with that. How do we create the most optimal experience on the vape side when it comes to oils and live resins and rosins that can rival and surpass the experience you get when you're consuming flower, right?
Yep.
Which has been the traditional method of consumption. And I think we get significant progress here with this 3.0 technology. So I'm excited to be here, excited to talk about it, and excited to showcase what we've been able to develop and bring to market here in 2025.
It's your background is interesting because going back to your story, to touch on it for a moment, packaging is an essential part of the entire cannabis industry. For better or for worse, the weed has to come in something, right? And Kush Bottles was similar to CCELL, one of the first, right? And got to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, similar again in CCELL. And so I love that collaboration and that uniting of trust, consistency, right? Importing and exporting, and all these different things that go into it, because Asia plays a big role into this. And there's a balance of that. And it's understanding that and building out the supply chain that the best entrepreneurs in the world and in history have been able to figure those kinds of things out. And you guys are doing that at the highest level and empowering brands. I look at CCELL. Well, first off, I'm going to go back for half a second. Coming from Washington, coming from Seattle, the first brand that I felt was a true platform for other brands was PAX with their pods. And I looked at other hardware companies, ones like CCELL that were bigger than a PAX, right? That, at least in cannabis, and that they would be the platform for it. And so I look at CCELL like it's the technology, it's a platform, it's a brand. And what I look forward to about CCELL, you said it, 2.0, is boots on the ground here in the States. So that way the platform that is CCELL can deliver more value, quicker help, be a part of the culture and the community in a more impactful and authentic way. And that is something that when you look at CCELL's journey here thus far, the greatness that it has, the impact that it has, it's actually capable of being better and going up and higher into a better, we'll call it into this cannabis atmosphere, right, to some extent. And so it's an honor to have you here, man. I appreciate your story, and it's so cool to learn from you guys and to have you all here. We're going to break down some of the nitty gritty of this 3.0 technology, the products, these kind of things. Are you ready to dive into that with me?
Yeah, look, I'll caveat with the corporate relations director. I'm not the technology expert, but
Of course.
some of the stuff, the deep dive on the tech is fascinating. We gave a great presentation at MJ BizCon.
Mm-hmm.
One of our technology leaders, Mark Rotundi, did. And, you mentioned Megan Galinsky, and these people are really smart on the tech. I've got a high level knowledge. I've been selling a lot of vapes. But, at the end of the day, what I like to do is I like to talk to the consumer.
Yeah.
We could create the greatest technology that all the science and tech nerds can geek out on, but is it really delivering a better consumer experience? And the resounding answer from that testing we did, especially at the launch in Vegas, and we had a great event at Planet 13,
Yep.
where we were able to use the consumption lounge and have people test this tech. Overwhelmingly positive response to this is different. This is better. We love what you guys have done here. And so that is the ultimate judgment on, the technology itself. But let's dive in a little bit. Let's talk about what's behind this hardware.
I've got a quote from your guys' product manager here from your press release there, Nick. The quote is simple. Our R&D experts spent countless hours engineering a heating element designed specifically for cannabis oil from the ground up. A lot of devices historically, this is the quote is done. A lot of devices is me talking. A lot of devices were not made for weed oil. A lot of things were just made for vaping. CCELL spent the time innovating technology to deliver bigger, cooler clouds, richer flavors, a consistently smooth experience with fewer issues when it comes to leaks and clogs. That's part of this CCELL 3.0 R&D efforts.
And you bring up a great point, right? And this is something that, when I partnered with CCELL back in 2017, and I was visiting headquarters in 2018, 2019 before the pandemic, we were impressed with what they had. I mean, the state-of-the-art $25 million testing facility over in Shenzhen, thousands of employees, just incredible stuff going on. And they're doing so much R&D work. And now they're doing this for nicotine vape. They're also doing it for cannabis vape.
Yep.
But there's a big thing missing, right? And it's obvious, right? Cannabis isn't allowed in China.
Right.
And so I remember as a distribution partner, we would take jugs of terpenes. Imagine taking jugs of terpenes into China. And of course, hoping not to have a conversation with someone about how this is a botanical terpene that mimics the flavor of cannabis. There's no cannabis oil in there. Thankfully, we never had any of those issues. But
wow,
we're bringing jugs of terpenes so that they could get a little bit closer to really testing cannabis. And that's just the nature of the reality of the vape makers, right? And you look across the whole industry, everybody that's making vaporization devices are factories in China, right? And some of them are groups here that have some R&D, but they're ultimately outsourcing the production to a factory in China. There's zero manufacturing happening here in the United States, right? And CCELL, we're proud to announce as well that we've got production capacity, significant production capacity in Indonesia, right? So diversifying out of China, but still in Asia, right? So the reality is all these things are made in Asia, and none of them are made in the U.S. And where is cannabis legal in Asia, right? Basically nowhere outside of maybe Thailand, right? But that's not a manufacturing hub. And so how does a manufacturer, technology maker, somebody that has the science and the R&D, ultimately perfect the device for cannabis oil when cannabis is actually illegal where you're doing all that research, right?
You said it, man. Boots on the ground, baby. It just had to happen.
That was the impetus, right? And so CCELL recognized that, and they made a significant investment. I mean, I think, I always was saying $10 million investment. I've heard it's actually upwards of 15 million that they've invested now in our SDR lab in Phoenix. And I mean, these are some of the top scientists on vaping technology that have moved their families to the Phoenix area to be able to be a part of this. The equipment there is incredible. We actually started opening up the facility for tours for customers because I think it just shows people, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and a visit is worth 100,000 times more than a PowerPoint, right? So come on by, see what we're doing, and it's impressive. And that was like you said in the quote, I mean, the countless hours, I mean, it goes back years to ultimately making the strategic decision to invest in the US so we could have a cannabis specific lab. And then years and years later, being able to come up with this cannabis specific technology for the 3.0 devices that is a game changer, right? And so a lot goes into it. And when you look at the technology itself, if you want to go a little bit deeper, right, for beyond sort of the layman understanding, these devices come down to primarily the core, right? And that's what made CCELL take off and become the market leader back in 2016, because they invented the ceramic core. Now, everybody else has knocked off that ceramic core, and every device essentially is ceramic. And we were selling devices before, back when they were different materials, cotton wicks and things like that. So we replaced that with ceramic. Great, that was great. Now this is a level up, because ceramic, there's the pores in the ceramic core, they're inconsistent, and that's just the nature of the design of the ceramic. And so the key behind this, and let me just tell you the why, right? You always got to start with the why. Why were we thinking that we needed to address the core? And that's because of temperature consistency. Now you see a lot of people talking about voltage and wattage, and obviously that's one way to have some level of consistency. But what we found, even in testing, and we've always had the best cores.
The chamber has a surprisingly large factor and impact in the equation here.
Exactly. And so, you may be using the same voltage, but your temperature still may be spiking, especially as you go deeper into some of these hits, right? And you want to do a long hit or a blinker, right? You may end up spiking your temperature unknowingly. And then, what does that do, right? That causes all kinds of issues. First of all, it heats the terpenes too high. And the number one thing when we talk to consumers and do focus studies is flavor, right? They want that flavor profile. And you have operators, brands, you have manufacturers, these folks in the lab that are working so hard to get that flavor just right, and that's going to be their key differentiator. And then you have a consumer buying that device, spending up for that device to get that flavor, and they're not even getting it they're getting a perverted version of it, right? Because it's being corrupted through some of this. So that was the why. And so when it came to the actual tech, one of the things that the team thought was really important was getting uniformity throughout the core, so that when you look at the core itself, and we call it a 3D stomata design, it's exceptionally leak and clog proof because all of the holes are uniform. So just imagine perfect uniform porous holes through a ceramic block, and then layering on top of that a stainless steel heating element and doing it in what we call the VeinMesh design, which is a play on the plant, because that's ultimately how the plant is through its natural growth is the VeinMesh sort of development, right? Which provides life to the buds, right?
This is
And
this
so
is crazy when you really think about it. I don't want to gloss over this, Nick. Let me take. We got to slow down about 5 to 7 miles an hour here, bro, because this is nuts. So this is part of the reason why I really like this. Is again, I'm from Seattle. I'm all about sustainability. We love the outdoors. We're looking for improvements on the technology. A lot of feedback about ceramic had to do with this heat, and a lot of products in any of the devices that exist, or any of the quartz, cubic zirconia, whatever it is, we do have the ability to have a user error and heat it or overheat it, or to some extent. Some of those cores, if you would, have better or worse heating. It keeps it hotter longer, or you got to let it cool down longer, more or less. Like they're all different cores.
well, and you just have the variable of inconsistency, right? And
1000%.
it may work great, but it also may not, and you don't want to take that risk,
right? And so when I read this story come through, man, proprietary VeinMesh technology reduces the core's peak temperature by 30%. Obviously, to improve terpene preservation with cooler vapes. But this, as Ed, you said, this is VeinMesh, influenced by the veins in leaves. Then you mentioned the 3D stomata. There's science to this. Let's expand. 10 times the number of core inlets as the competitor products, non-ceramic. So this is your version of a new version of a ceramic core, to ensure even oil flow through the inconsistent ceramics. And what this does by increasing the core inlets to ensure the even oil flow, that reduces leaks and clogs by 50%, because now, just like how plants can breathe through their living pores, if you would, now your core, the oil can flow through more consistently through the core, creating an even distribution of that heating.
Exactly. And again, remember what I said in the beginning is ultimately
crazy.
Nature is perfect, right? And so that plant experience is phenomenal. And so how do we just mimic nature the best we can, and creating a better, the beauty of the vape is it's portable. It doesn't have some of the challenges with flower where around if you're making your own flower products, rolling, etc. If you're burning, the smoke, the odor. So you've got some great things already with vape. Now, how do you sort of try to combine the best of the plant with the best of vape? And you just said it, right? That these are the elements that we came up with. It's phenomenal. And shout out to the marketing team as well for coming up with some of the names to really highlight that.
Yeah,
right?
that shit's hot too. Big shout out to the squad, because that stuff is really cool. Amazing, cool names, solves the problem. Obviously, one of the things that when I read this is we got to touch on the different products that the technology's in. So I wanted to shout out those products real quick. You guys just launched the CCELL 3.0 is introduced in a new postless gem box, the gem bar, and the MixJoy all-in-one devices, as well as the Vita and Diama 1 to 2 milliliter 510 cartridges. So
look, I mean, I think that this is another thing, right? When you think about innovation and being a leader, you want to skate where the puck's going, and we know all-in-one devices are very gaining in popularity, right? Even more so because of the convenience. Also, the design, people like the boxy designs now. The MixJoy is a great example of giving people the dual flavor option, right? You can put two different flavors in the MixJoy. You could put something that's indica or sativa. You can put something that's distillate versus something that's got more plant profile to it, right? Live resin or rosin, and you can consume each of those separately at any
Yeah.
given time, right? Or you can combine the two and consume them together. So maximum flexibility for the consumer in an all-in-one form factor, right? Giving the brand something different. And so that's why those are at the top of our product launch list, because we know that's where the market's going. Now, that said, we invented the ceramic 510 thread cart back in 2016. Carts are still very prevalent. And so why not make this revolutionary technology also available in the cartridges, right? And so that's where you have those kind of coming right behind. But yeah, great initial slate of products getting launched, and long term, right, we'll be incorporating this technology into more products. The technology itself is the foundation for this 3.0 platform. These are the products that we're initially launching with this year. But again, expect for that list to grow in years to come. Of course, new innovation will come as well, but this is such a step up in technology. Again, the ceramic core was invented in 2016. Here we are, almost 10 years later, 9 years later, right? Coming up with the 3.0, which I think is that next step up. And this technology will probably set the bar over the next few years. But who knows, right? Innovation's moving faster than ever these days. And that's, again, what I love about CCELL is the willingness to continue to spend. It's not like, hey, we just reinvented this, the best technology on the market. Let's sit on our laurels. We're continuing to put 15% of revenue back into R&D. And it's not just, what is currently happening today with vape. We're thinking about the future, right? For example, with the parent company, they're moving into heat not burn, right? Which is a big category for nicotine. What's going to be next for cannabis? Those are the things that we're thinking about. Those are the conversations we're having. And so we want to change the game with this 3.0, dominate the marketplace with this 3.0, but continue to innovate and come up with the next thing. And ultimately provide that, it's all dictated by the customer. What's that customer experience? How do we enhance that? And when you have resources, you can do it. That's one of the reasons I'm here at the company, because I've been in cannabis a long time. I've been in at times where we've had a lot of resources. I've been at times with a lot of companies, and this, right? It's tough, right? You don't have, you want to spend on the future, but you don't have the budget. So you end up getting caught up in the now, and being able to do both here because we're well funded, and it's truly a blessing. For me, 15 years in the industry, to now be in this position and working with this team, it's incredible.
The innovation that you guys, bringing the ceramic core again back in 2016, we're looking at 9 years ago, roughly now 8 to 9 in that time frame. Like, what an era of time to have been around in. Kush bottles, the CCELL. I was a bud tender at that time in Washington. Leafly brand ambassador at that time. So much was coming online, and there's a couple other key components that I want to touch on with this product line. The innovation over time CCELL has had, the relevance is there, the clients, the growth, the presence is there. Like, super excited to see just go from these wicks and plastic vapes. Not to say CCELL had plastic vapes back in the day, but in Washington, man, there was plastic tips, there was cotton wicks, there was metal
and zero testing, right?
Yeah, it was just nuts. It was nuts.
I remember a funny story. Washington was our second market we invested in at Kush bottles on the packaging. This was pre-vape, and I remember we went up on a little bit of a fact finding tour, right? See what the market was like. And I remember hey, how much regulation is there in packaging? And I remember my partner coming out of one of the dispensaries. He said, look, we said, oh, did they put it in a child resistant container? He says, look, the guy would have put it in my shirt pocket if I would have just opened it up right there. He would have dropped the nug right in my shirt pocket. There's no regulation, right?
Yeah.
So you were in that industry at the time. I mean, obviously they regulated in 2016. Everybody's gotten more regulated over the years,
of
but
course,
it was the Wild West.
Is so much different than from that era, right? And that's where I think with you guys, you guys have been able to have the broad range of clients in various categories, ranging from the distillate to the live rosins to the live resins, and all these different categories of oil and types, these different viscosities. Oil's different in different regions, for better or for worse. Different needs, different climates. That's something too. I'm real big as a former bud tender, as somebody who handled marketing and management and retail stuff. You look at data in vapes, and it's like there's this clogging vaping issue. And then all vape companies always say, well, we're at less than 1% fail rate, right? Like, that's the quote to live and die on, right? Is either we're working to get there, we're almost there, or we're already there, right? That's what everybody lives and dies with. But then you talk to enough bud tenders and it just doesn't feel that way. But it's I want to throw this out there. This is a misconception part. The warmer it is in the area you live in, increases leaks because of user error. If it was stored properly, it lasts longer.
Yeah.
If it's stored improperly, which is just as simple as being left in a car, being left upside down in your purse in a warm vehicle, or in a backpack upside down in a warm day over time, or in the sun, all of that kind of stuff can happen on any of these devices. Now, it's unfair to blame the hardware companies a lot of the times for those kinds of things, considering how often consumers don't even listen to any of the education that people give them.
Yeah.
And so I would love to touch on what you guys are going to be doing, with more presence in the States. Can we expect to see CCELL more involved in these bud tender elements, in these retail elements, and start to see more of maybe an educational push or some kind of culture shift from that regard?
Right. Yeah. Great question. And you mentioned, everything you're saying is spot on, because ultimately CCELL, we're in this position where we are a consumer, excuse me, are a consumer brand, and consumers know us and trust us, but we're beholden to, number one, the manufacturers that are producing the product and filling the product, and number two, the consumers themselves, the dispensary and the consumers themselves, how they're storing the product,
Of
right?
course.
And the length of time. And so what we want to do from an R&D standpoint is, of course, plan for every possible variable, right? And make a product that is going to perform under a variety of circumstances, no matter how it's sort of treated, but you can't solve for everything. Education's a big piece, right? And, but, like you said, are we going to be able to get to the consumer through the dispensary channel? And yes, that's a goal of ours, right? Because ultimately, we want the consumer to know that there's a clear difference with CCELL hardware versus other hardware, right? We want them to understand that. We don't want them to think that, they bought a product from a certain brand, and that it's necessarily that brand that had a burnt cart. No, it's that brand's oil in a hardware that heated up too high on your longer hit that ultimately burnt that flavor, right? So for a consumer to understand that and then start to trust it, right? Just like, a lot of us, back in the early computing days, looked for that Intel logo on the computer, right? The Intel processing chip, that was something that could be trusted, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
CCELL definitely wants to position that way so that we can partner with our brand.
Chip in vapes. I never looked at it like that way, but that is a great way to look at hardware in those situations.
Definitely. So that's something we want to do, but we think there's a lot of support, ultimately, and we always talk about this in cannabis world, right? It's like, and you were a bud tender, right? It's like, that's where it happens, right? That's where the magic happens, because it's still a new category. People are going to the dispensary, they want education, and, not everybody, but the vast majority. And I think the category is going to open up in a major way. And I'd love to talk to you about that too, on just a macro level. But I think that's where we got to be if we want to develop the trust with the consumer, and for the consumer to really understand the value proposition. So we plan to make those investments.
That's amazing, man. And that's exciting too, because, I mentioned this offline. I'll bring it up online. We're leaders in the space, whether it's us as a publication or me just by myself as a creator. I want to have impact, and you guys want to have impact, right? That's why you're spending money on R&D. That's why you guys created the business in the first place, was to have impact in the space. But that impact goes beyond revenue sometimes. Not to say we can't incorporate it and make sure it's all positive, right? Like, that's important, right? Revenue and positive, being in the green, making money, profiting. But when we look at going back to that core thing of impact, I look forward to seeing CCELL extend its reach into different areas, different communities, different regions, if you would, and seeing that impact come to life in real life, beyond branded batteries, beyond just, growing the business bottom line. Again, nothing wrong with those things happening at the same time, but that's the challenge for people like me in the community is, can we get CCELL to do stuff in the niche communities that need the right help, whether it is in cannabis, these social equity conversations, or the diversity conversations, or the women conversations, all these different elements of what's important in the States. That's my ask as we get CCELL, as you guys, again, we're on our first interview together too. We're part of
Yeah.
that culture. We want to see these things from CCELL the same way that we see some of these other smaller vape hardware brands that were only here or have been here the whole time. Some of these old Washington ones or these Arizona cats or these New York cats, right? Like CCELL comes in, that bubble for vaping becomes a little bit easier for all of us. And I think as an education standpoint, you guys obviously, shout out the Seed Talent fam coming in here. Great education program already available out there. That's something that in 2025, at the beginning of the year, I'm hearing about that. The whole time I've known CISA, I never even knew about that. So that's already major growth, major progress, different, whether it's me hearing about it or even just it being available year over year. I'd love to hear that kind of stuff.
Well, I think you bring up a sort of bigger dynamic, right? And this is a dynamic that you're in an interesting position because you are really with the culture, right, and with the trends. And what you're seeing is really being driven by people that have been in the industry a long time, legacy guys and gals, right? Brands, and also some people that are doing some really innovative stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these people are scaling. And you have a whole another side of the industry, which is the MSOs, right? And these MSOs, and you and I, we had dinner in Chicago with my good friend Alex at 1937 Group.
Yeah,
and
that's the culture.
That's the culture, right? And they're kind of in the mix because they're in Illinois, which is MSO land, right? And they're but they have the roots of the culture. Alex, and I were doing stuff in cannabis in California in 2010, right? So we go way back.
Oh yeah,
So
Alex is OG legacy. I always sleep on him for that. He the OG. He y'all
he
look
was
so
there
young
before
for
me,
how
man.
long
He
you've been
taught
in
me.
this
He put me
space.
on game. Yeah. So look, the point is, right, I think in terms of business, we want to be catering to everybody. I think that a lot of the value proposition of someone like CCELL is for MSOs, of people that are at scale, that want a really trusted quality producer, right? And somebody that they know is going to follow all the guidelines, is going to check all the boxes. And that's why you do business with large companies, right? But at the same hand, right, this industry is being driven by those smaller operators. And so CCELL needs to be involved there. We need to be empowering them. One of the things that we're working on, right, of course, on the marketing front, you mentioned Angela is a great friend, and, kind of put a lot of this together during her tenure here, but is, collaborations where we can support these brands, these social equity brands, but really these, trending consumer brands that are great, all spreading up all throughout the country. But of course,
they
in
move
legacy
so
markets,
nimble, they move so quick, and the internet
they
and
have the
everything, it's
advantage.
not the same as what it was. So
Totally. So we're going to support them with marketing dollars and collaborations and joint, marketing efforts. So we're excited about that. But the other thing that we're looking into, right, is CCELL has done. And I've been visiting the factory since 2018, and I've seen what we've been able to do over in Asia in terms of bringing automation to our supply chain. Right, it was very manual, and it's become much more automated. Automation obviously coming everywhere these days with robotics and AI and all those trends. But that's an advantage that the MSOs have at scale. But everybody's challenged by it in cannabis because we can't truly get scale until interstate commerce opens up, right? Because everybody's got to do state by state infrastructure.
It's all patchwork right now. Everything's patchwork and connecting it.
Exactly, and so you have a lot of folks. Even if they have decent volume in their core market, their core state, they don't necessarily have scale, and so they wouldn't be able to make the investments in automation for some of their processes that someone like CCELL could make those investments and ultimately provide and educate and assist some of these folks in being able to be much more efficient, right? And then that would give
there's a CCELL like R&D lab somewhere in Arizona or something like that now.
Yes.
Come on, baby, let's go. That's so exciting, man. Let's go. That's so cool.
It's legit, and I think the automation for filling and packing, that's going to ultimately drive efficiencies with these brands. That's going to make their performance in the CCELL hardware better. It's going to give them the ability to drive a lower cost for the consumer, which is going to lead to more consumption. So I think we could be part of that whole ecosystem and actually drive that with some of our expertise in automation and being able to empower operators in the industry, whether you are an MSO or whether you are a
Yeah,
small
of
brand.
course.
But I think it's the small brands that
There's
need
a
it the
different
most.
place depending on who y'all are talking to. There's a whole different
Exactly.
place to run depending on the size, the scale, the region, the location. CCELL, from what I'm gathering from you reading between the lines, you guys are set up to be able to accommodate those various ones. And now 2.0 version of CCELL, 3.0 technology, you're primed, ready, and committed to being out there, we'll call it in the streets a little bit more, or in the farms a little bit more, or at these events. So that way you can meet these people where they're at, solve these problems. We had a question here from YouTube. I just want to pop in because we can. We don't often get questions that apply to everything. Sometimes it's just showing love. How does CCELL work with different viscosity and flow rate variability? Asking as a cultivator who looks into product versatility, right? So what are your thoughts in terms of answering that kind of question?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's a great question. Again, I'm not the technical guru to answer it. Our salespeople are equipped to chat, so please reach out. But I think at a high level, right, this is part of been the mission of CCELL, is especially with oil diversification, because when we started with vaping, the oil consistencies were relatively similar, right? Everyone was using distillate, and now you have people using different viscosities, and so do you develop different hardware for all of these different oil types? And
Yeah.
we have some things like our rosin bar, for example, is a great relatively new technology that we should point out. It's using our hero element, heating element, which is HERO, heating element, which does, is built specifically to enhance terpene and cannabinoid delivery, because we have solventless oils and stuff that have more of that terpene availability. So we
Well,
want to be able
they
to
burn
enhance.
different. Rosin burns differently in ceramic cores or metal, whatever core.
Yeah.
It burns different in all of them, and also to the temperature. Again, going back to that.
Totally right. And so the rosin bar, I mean, that's why we won the 2024 Canatech Innovation Award for this product, because it was built for preserving those flavors and delivering robust vapor clouds for specifically rosin. The rosin bar, it's a phenomenal product. I actually use, it's one of my go-to products, right? So personally, that one's great. But again, then you get to sort of into these different product differentiations for different
Yeah,
oil types. The
distillate.
goal,
So that's what it is. You have
but
product
the goal, though,
differentiation.
Joe, here's where it brings back to the 3.0. This is why the 3.0 is so exciting. This 3.0 technology will essentially work consistently across any different oil type, and the flow, the airflow, will be optimal. Optimal. I'm not talking about you can get by. I'm talking about you're going to get the optimal performance because of the way that it was designed. With there's no cotton in this
Yeah,
product at all, right? It's got the
postless.
it's postless, and you mentioned sort of getting the 1% failure rate is sort of the industry, but are you getting all the oil out of your device, right?
That's such a common thing no one ever
Yeah,
talks about, but that
sure, it
so
didn't
huge.
fail, but I only got 75% of what I paid for.
Yeah.
Whereas with the postless 3.0 tech, we're seeing 99%, almost 100% of the oil be able to
Wow.
be vaporized, and again, all
Wow.
consistent throughout. Whether you're starting your cart mid journey or you're at the end, you're going to get the consistent flavor. So that is the real differentiator with 3.0 as
I
well.
love it,
And
brother. I love your passion for cannabis. I think it stands out in your success and hustle and dedication and work ethic as an entrepreneur. I think that's how a lot of it, how your passion obviously shines. You build businesses, right? And you build relationships, you solve problems. And it's so cool to hear you get just as jazzed up about hardware and the technology in this. And again, you said this numerous times on the show. You're not even the R&D product science guy in this. This is something that you, as a consumer, over time, working with all these brands and being so well connected, like ears to the streets, ears to the R&D teams in different places. I really value the perspective on this. Obviously, you're CCELL, and we're talking CCELL today, right? But when we think about resources and just being an available option out there for people, it is without a doubt that the CCELL 3.0 technology can and potentially very well could take anyone's oil to a different level.
yeah,
And also, additionally, if you do operate, to answer this guy's question a different way, but with the same info, the viscosities are all going to vary based on the oil type, based on temperature, outside, inside, ups, all the things. So that's honestly the wrong question that he's asking. The CISO has products for specific oil types, and now there's technology in a variety of products that allows it to accommodate all oil types depending on
exactly,
the situation.
exactly.
Airflow, postless, cottonless.
And one thing that we've been talking about, right, is the CCELL investing in the boots on the ground. Part of the boots on the ground is our tech teams that will come. They will come to your site, right? So if we want to work together, because ultimately, like we said, right, the consumer's buying this thing and the consumer's experiencing it. If they get it wrong, it doesn't matter how great our technology was, they're going to have a bad experience. They're going to write it off. And so it's got to be,
this is that customer 2.0, CCELL 2.0.
It's got to flow through the whole supply chain, and we're there to help. We want it to work as well as it should work, and our teams will make the trip, come to your lab, get it dialed in, and make sure that you have a differentiated product in the market. With this technology, you can really differentiate from the competition. And I think that's part of the issue in the industry is like a lot of people selling the same stuff, and it ends up being a price game, right? And then you have margin degradation, and people are struggling to make money. And so we got to think about, how do we make this industry long-term sustainable? And of course, if you look at any industry, who gets good margins, obviously you have monopolistic and oligopolistic industries, like where we get our power and our utilities, right? They can do it. They can give bad service and still make a lot of money. But if you're a consumer product, you need to deliver value to your consumer. And if you deliver enough value, they'll pay for it, right? And so you look at how do we do that for cannabis brands to empower them to be able to be profitable and sustainable? Because ultimately, that's what we need as an industry. We've seen too much economic collapse in this industry over the last 4 years, right? Really kind of three to 4 years. It's not, we're gaining in popularity with the consumer. And that's, one thing I wanted to mention is kind of what your take is on the future of how this industry expands, because all I'm seeing is a decline in alcohol consumption and an increase in cannabis consumption. But it's overshadowed by the fact that pricing and margins have been eroded in a lot of these legacy markets, and people are struggling to make money.
And thus revenue's down overall. So it must be a terrible situation for everybody, right? But as I discussed yesterday with a good friend of mine from Washington State, shout out Trap House Connection, Blake Benton, you don't always have to be the biggest of the biggest. You can be a business that does, a couple $100,000 a month and exists in a couple million a year, and you can have a successful cannabis business that way. So there's a bunch of different ways to operate in this space. For those of you guys that are watching this episode, I appreciate you, number one, for the support and the engagement and letting us do what we do. And number two, if you guys need anything in the vape space, any hardware questions, while we were watching, went to CCELL.com and I filled in the gaps while I was doing this podcast to be able to ask more informed questions. So should you guys have questions, CCELL.com is available. They have a section dedicated to CCELL 3.0. They also have a section dedicated to their products, distillates, live resins, and all oil products as well. Stuff that's already been designed that way, stuff that has 3.0, stuff that has the regular things in it, all the way through it. So really appreciate you guys again. Nick, I always like to let my guests leave our viewers with something. And today I would appreciate it if you could talk to those people that have had those legacy experiences with CCELL, stuff that's happened COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID, whoever has that bad taste in their mouth. What can we do to talk about CCELL 2.0 and why it might be worth them to revisit considering doing business with you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the number one feedback that we've got in the market, right, is that number one, CCELL from a quality standpoint is, there's never been a doubt, right? Nobody's ever doubted the quality of the CCELL product. And of course, we want to maintain that threshold. That's the bare minimum. People have said, hey, look, you've been a little bit, behind on some of the trends like all-in-ones, for example. Well, again, look at what we're launching now, right? We're catching up in a very big way. But more importantly, right, just because you don't see some new technology and new innovation coming up from us on, regular, annual basis doesn't mean we're not working diligently behind the scenes. Again, when 3.0, and I think this was really, I think it shocked the ecosystem at MJ Biz when we launched this, right? People understanding this is years in the making. This is truly game changing when you're talking about step level. It's not coming up with a new form factor that's cool or hot. I mean, we're talking about redesigning the heating element that we sort of made, this industry standard. It started in 2016, redesigning the whole thing here 8-9 years later to really encompass where the industry's gone, and to better align vaping, which is a phenomenal technology, with the plant, which is nature, which is perfect, and being able to align those to where you can have a consumer experience that's unrivaled. So we're working behind the scenes to do that. Now, the other thing that we know is CCELL's traditionally worked through distributors. Our distribution partners are still here, still going strong, and they're great partners to a lot of brands and manufacturers throughout the country. So, again, those are listed on our website. We've got Jupiter Research, we've got 3Win, we've got Green Lane, and we've got Canna Brands. And so they're continuing to be evangelists in the market for us. They're continuing to service their customers on a regular basis. These are great companies, but there's not enough resources to go around, right? And these companies, just like every other cannabis company, they've had challenges, raising capital and being able to expand their businesses, and that's where we're stepping in, to support. We want to amplify the efforts that they've already made with our boots on the ground here. And so a lot of that comes down to the research team in Phoenix, the lab there, but it also comes down to the mobile teams that can come to your site. And now we've got sales and marketing teams. We've got the LA headquarters. And so we've got our own boots on the ground too. So there's now an added layer of service. It's not the same as it used to be where, everybody had to work through China to get answers from CCELL or get innovation from CCELL. We've moved those resources here so we can be much more responsive and beneficial. And so that, I think, is going to be the big difference to people that have experienced CCELL in the past. The quality's there. It's always been there. I don't think anyone's ever questioned that. New technology finally here, right? People have been waiting for that. It's finally here. And the big difference is what you haven't had in the past is those boots on the ground, and they are here as well.
The supportive elements.
It's one thing. 2025.
It's also one thing to continue to innovate and make new products and to keep creating new form factors, and the support system doesn't change. But then, but as the industry changes and payment issues, brand scale, business, because it's normal business, we're not all supposed to make it. Like, there's all these different things going on, and it's really wonderful to hear that CCELL's again going to be stepping in or already has new form factors, new launch, new technology. MJ BizCon, I really appreciate you, Nick, being here with us today. For those of you guys watching, this was episode 134 of the Respect My Region podcast.
Nice.
We had one hell of a big guest today, CCELL, my guy Nick, corporate relations director. It's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. Everybody watching, support us, talk shit about us, support them though, because they're making moves and they're going to be empowering customers and their clients and their distribution partners in a big way. Boots on the ground, postless tank, cottonless. We're talking biomimetic. Like, these are words. Like, come on, man. You guys are really bringing a lot of science and energy to it. The Gem Box, the Gem Bar, the Mixjoy all-in-one, the Vita, the Diamo 1 to 2 milliamp 510 cartridges. Stick 3D Stomata, like plants. Breathe. Nick, thank you. It has been a pleasure.
Hey, thank you, brother, man. Thanks for having me on. This has been great, and I appreciate you amplifying our message.
Come on, man. Make sure you guys tap in. If you guys have any question, Nick is on LinkedIn.